Very good afternoon to all of you. And today I have a most, or should I say, the easiest job, because my job is continuing what I have been doing in class. Ask questions. Questions to the panelists. And we have very interesting topic. We are going to talk about the building brands to the culture of innovation. Now, whenever we talk about building brands, and we have a very distinguished panels covering a wide variety of context, FMCG sector, service sector, QSR sector. So we are going to have a service sector. We hope that we are going to have a very interesting discussion going forward. So let me start by first talking about how the whole thing happens in FMCG sector. So probably I'll request Mr. Gunjit to start with. And in terms of how, because innovation is not just building, when you talk about building a brand, it's about coordination across number of multiple players. How do you take this up, and what are the challenges that you see coming up in future?
Cool, thanks for making me the opening batsman. I'm not necessarily used to that. So, one is super excited to be here. Extremely kicked when I got this invitation, simply because I thought that there were a lot of parallels to what is currently happening at Colgate and the topic for today, which is inculcating culture. And before I get to your question, I want to share why it's super relevant for me. It's super relevant for me because at Colgate, which is the company that I represent, we are actually going through a culture change. For a company that is 200 years old, for a company that's there in more than 200 countries, we recently decided that we are going to change the values of the company. The three values that the company stands for are caring, inclusive, and we changed the third one from continuous improvement to being courageous. And for somebody like me who's not worked with any other company, and there are many of us like that at Colgate, we were like, hey, we were always told one step at a time, continuous improvement. Our CEO, ex-CEO in New York, he used to say, at Colgate, we win in the marketplace not by hitting home runs, but by hitting one base at a time, one step at a time. And now what we have been told is that, hey, it's absolutely fine to go for home runs. It's absolutely fine to strike out a few times, but let's be courageous. And innovation requires courage. And we are talking about the culture of inculcating the culture of innovation, and that's why I was super keen to come here, not only so that I can share some of my experiences, but also learn from the esteemed panel here. Coming back to your question on how does innovation get done? There's a standard process to follow innovation. There is no rocket science there, but I will just talk about the most important part, which is innovation has to be purposeful innovation, not for the heck of it. Innovation has to be in the purpose of the strategy that the company or the brand has. It always starts with strategy, which is what is our winning aspiration? Where will we play? How will we win? And if how will we win includes innovation, then innovation has to serve that purpose rather than just being all over the place and for the heck of it. So I'll just say purposeful innovation is the most important thing.
This would have required you to work into building a variety of products, and that probably also would have been a big challenge. How did you overcome those challenges? What actually you did at Adani, Wilmar, which actually helped you to overcome those challenges? Can you share some of those?
Thank you for the question, Professor, and it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think at the core of it, at the core of our DNA, Adani Wilmar, what is at the core? I think there are a few things. One is that we think at scale. And the second is that we have a deep capability and understanding in the agri-value chain, which is basically about agri-commodity procurement, processing, value addition and upstream value addition in agri-produce. So anything that we do has to spring from here. It has to kind of be powered out of these core capabilities, our core DNA of the organization. And of course, each of these has a lot of implications, scale thinking, right from procurement to distribution, consumption, which means that you're actually catering not only to consumers, but you're also catering to institutional segment, to the HoReCa segment. So it's a huge pipeline from agri to consumption, whether that consumption is in home or out of home. So when we look at it that way, then it's important that innovation teams don't get drowned in the decibel of everything that's happening today. Like, there will be a lot of din, there will be a lot of noise or a lot of productive stuff as well happening on various things that the innovation team would be picking up. For example, it could be protein, personalization, or it could be instantization, or it could be do-it-yourself, or return to native, or return to traditional, return to, let's say, more older world ways of doing things, etc. But I think it's important that we don't get lost in what's happening today and jump right in. That we need to start, and that's the culture that we're trying to build. We need to start with an original thesis of why will we succeed. And it has to be a homegrown thesis on why we will succeed. And a thesis that is rooted in the DNA of the organization, and also something that can be material to the organization in terms of either top line or bottom line or regulation. So that's what we've been focusing on, building a culture and building a process wherein we will come up with an original homegrown hypothesis of success. And also as a culture, it becomes important that for the innovation teams to have the ownership and the conviction. There needs to be a lot of primary legwork. I think the seeds of that thesis of success will actually come from a lot of legwork, meeting dozens of consumers, meeting custodians of consumer knowledge like retailers, other trade partners. So it becomes very important to be convinced yourself on which are these areas that I want to pick up, and which are these areas that can be supported by the strengths of the organization. And that becomes important in terms of making the right project choices. That's the first thing we're working on. And then of course the rest of the building process.
So very clearly what I see is that both of you are talking about is that is coming from what the organization stands for. And that is driving what the direction which you are going to. Let's move slightly away from that, and maybe I think next time just Aparna talk about it. That we know that KFC is in the consumption sector, and consumption sector is one sector which is definitely moving. And a lot of insights are probably getting picked up from the consumers. How do you channelize all those insights to build that culture of innovation for launching brands? Can you share some light on that?
Thank you. Thanks, Professor. And again, thank you to the entire team, Anurag, Business World, everybody for us to be here. It's a very important topic. It was referred to earlier as well, and Gunjit talked about it. It's an important one, I think, simply because the world is changing, categories are changing, brands are changing, consumer preferences are changing, technology is changing so rapidly. So to your point, if you don't innovate, and if it's not in your DNA and culture, like Gunjit was also talking about, you will struggle, the brand will struggle, your business will struggle. And at the heart of all of that innovation, again another one, thank you for putting a lot of words in my mouth, purposeful, which comes from consumers. So if you don't have a hand on the pulse of what's going to make you reinvent yourself, and again, reinventing not without purpose, but because you know that that's what the next trend is, that's what's going to push the brand and business forward. KFC has been in India now for the last 25 plus years, and each time the team thinks about what next for the brand, what next, not just on the product and menu, but on campaigns, on purpose, a lot of different areas of innovation. We think about what's going to take the brand forward from a growth perspective. It's going to be long term. It's going to be something that's going to serve consumers well, whether it's on value or on occasions or anything else, or variety. These are 2-3 aspects that keep emerging in a QSR business. So we're very focused on what is it that the consumers are looking for, what are they consuming today, what are they looking for next. And again, those are the paths that fuel innovation for us.
How do you get to know? I mean, can you? What all tracking do you do?
Yeah, I think constantly checking the pulse. So research, of course, is one massive. Now, various types of research as well. At KFC India, we end up doing both qualitative researches, in-market tests and pilots that we do, picking up a couple of markets. We also have fantastic franchise partners who support a lot of experimentation, a lot of piloting, a lot of tests in their restaurants, which is a joint business as one system. We also have equity restaurants in some parts of the country, so we use those as restaurants and outlets that can give us more information and we fuel growth like that. So rapid, fast experimentation, quickly failing as well and learning from that, because I know that's such an integral part of innovating as well. Not being afraid to test things, just because everything needs to succeed is not part of the culture or DNA again. You can fail at a few things and that's absolutely all right. You learn from it, those are opportunities. And hence, again, a lot of times we think about innovation as a, let's say, 8-month cycle, 7-month cycle is going to take a long time. I think in today's day and age, it's also important to rapidly test, be able to learn quickly. How do you do that using technology today? So you need to combine a few of these to be able to quickly learn, experiment, and keep a check on the pulse.
That's very interesting. So what you're saying that have those innovations coming in, because KFC also needs to ensure certain level of systemization, also keep those experiments keep on happening, and therefore we learn from it. And I think you touched on a very important point. Failure is going to be part and parcel of innovation. That's always going to happen, and that's my next question, Mr. Karan. Because I think given the sector that you are in, probably you will be dealing with a lot of failure because it's a high technology context, and a lot of research would need to go into new product development, and therefore a lot of failures could also be happening. How as an organization you manage and cope up with that, and what incentives you give to the employees so that culture of innovation is sustained?
Thank you, Prof. And thank you, Mrs. Wall. Thank you for the people who showed interest in this session to be here. Appreciate. I'm sure spending the entire day at a conference like this can be difficult. I'm going to say, so I worked about 16 years at ITC. I worked about 3 years at India, 3 years at DLF, and now I'm working with a chain of fertility clinics. And there are a couple of things that I've kind of noted down while some of my panelists were speaking. And one of the things that Prof just said. So let me quickly say the first thing which comes to my mind, which is, do you know what is the biggest adversary of innovation? Culture, DNA, all that is fine. What is the biggest adversary of innovation? The biggest adversary of innovation is actually incremental improvement. And this is something that Gunjit referred to when he said that we're moving into incorporating a value called courage. Because you will innovate whether you are a person in individual capacity, a team leader or an organization, only if you have the courage to embrace failure. Innovation and failure are two sides of the same coin. And that's something that Prof just quickly touched upon right now, right? If you don't have the capacity and you don't have the capability of embracing failure, don't even try and fool the world, forget your own internal system that you are out there to innovate. Right? So incremental changes versus a fundamentally new product value proposition is the first difference in terms of true innovation or not. Second, your appetite for failure has to be more than your appetite for success. Please keep in mind when you're trying to do blue sky thinking, you will fail many more times than you will succeed. So don't be stupid and foolhardy in believing that everything I'm going to touch is going to turn into gold. If you, in your individual capacity or as a team leader and as an organization, do not have that appetite, again, don't fool yourself. Appetite for failure and therefore the courage to be able to deal with failure is the other thing that becomes extremely important. The third thing that you must be careful about, not careful, but you need to be aware about, is every innovation causes a tension in a cross-functional team. Also equally important, every innovation happens because of a cross-functional team. No single team innovates by itself. So the marketing team will be based on certain feedback from consumers, from the sales teams, will go to the product team, and everybody is going to be pushing the other person outside their standard comfort zone. So if you have to innovate, A, recognize that it's a cross-functional team effort. B, recognize that everybody is going to feel uncomfortable. C, recognize your own capability to make people as comfortable as possible. Otherwise, your starting point of an innovation or product development is zero. And the last thing that I want to say is that if you want to really strongly drive a culture of innovation, keep in mind three things. One is the process. So there needs to be a process in place. It's not, you have to make sense of the madness, right? And including what my friend Aparna just said. You fail, you need to figure out in how much time I will give myself to test out a concept. And if I do fail, in how much time will I revise the concept? And that's just one part of the process. Process is the first thing. It needs to be very clearly enshrined. Secondly, you need to have a separate investment budget which you can write off. Because you will fail. I told you in the beginning, you will fail more number of times than you'll succeed. So you're not going to get an ROI in a standard, typical kind of a way in which you monitor it across other spends. So process, investment, and the third, I think that's counterintuitive, is patience. Everything cannot be just accelerated. Some things have their own time of learning and implementation. So for me, I think these three things, or these 4 points are important points. Just a quick one on where I'm working right now. I work with Jain of fertility clinics, highly specialized subspecialty in healthcare. For us, innovation also means creating treatments and protocols which do not exist right now. And how do we do that? We invest the highest amount in the world on proprietary research. So we use those outcomes to create changes to our existing treatment protocols. So very different from your FMCG kind of a play, but I've done FMCG. I've done 16 years of ITC. Very different from your FMCG kind of play, but that's the other interesting place where innovations intersect with research and marketing. And the idea is to incorporate as many new innovative practices to tweak and change treatments only to the extent of improving patient outcomes. Thanks, Prof.
Very interesting. Come back to
So, I just want to build on a couple of extremely critical and important things that Karan just spoke about, which is failure. Embracing failure is too far away. In most of the organizations, failure is punished. Right? That's the starting point. On your individual objectives or OKRs or whatever you want to call it, you get 4 out of 5, you don't get the highest rating. You miss something, you're gone, right? So it's a too far away and ideal for many organizations. So starting one step at a time is extremely critical. And that's where, again, another thing that Karan spoke about is, put some money aside for it. Start by making there room for failure. So an example of that, in my last job, I was in the Greater China region, and one of the winning aspirations we had crafted for ourselves was to be the best in the industry on media effectiveness and efficiency. And for that, what we had to do, so that people, learn to fail and therefore, do things which are courageous, we took 15% of our media dollars aside and put it as something which we called the learning lab. So suddenly, the job of that team managing the learning lab was to fail 10 times and succeed once. So it was that 15% of the money that actually made the balance 85% better, because we learned what doesn't work 10 times and we learned one thing that worked. So extremely critical 2 point that he just mentioned.
Learning from failure is absolutely, you close the door, you know that that's not going to work. At least you know that that's not going to work. That's so moving on, I think come back to this cross-functional effort later, but before my next question is for Akash. Akash, you know that all the speakers have been also talking about it, that they all in 7 process, 7 norms. I think your industry, your sector is one which is going to face it most, because being in the banking sector, you have to follow a number of regulations. How do you manage to create a culture of innovation in spite of so many regulatory requirements, that norms that you have to follow? The RBI is other fixed things that you have, and you are thinking that you are seeing up base bank, so you have to follow norms from there also. How do you manage all that and still continue to build a culture of innovation?
Sure. So, for me, innovation, as per definition, is something different that creates value, right? I think one of the things that I believe is generally a policy is to look at innovations as something which only large changes which have to be done, only engineers can do it, only people who go to Silicon Valley can do it, and so on and so forth, right? So I think it could, operate at any levels. Rather in TBS, we look at viability of all innovations in a pyramid that we call ACT, which has impact today, tomorrow, day after, and obviously moonshot innovations as well, right? And I think for us, the objective of operating within the regulations is fairly ingrained into what we do. But I think there are enough and more opportunities for us to innovate. And in the services industry, it's largely about how do you cross-functionally collaborate, which my panelists were referring to significantly. So one of the big changes that TBS has gone through is about to organize ourselves differently, right? We believe at something called managing through journeys, where our fundamental concept is that typically organizations in the past are organized vertically, right? So you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got distribution, and so on and so forth, right? Our belief is if we start with what the consumer's jobs to be done is, and then organize ourselves backwards, we'll actually be a lot more effective in delivering to what the consumer needs, right? What does it mean, right? I think the concept of cross-functional collaboration becomes is a topic which gets discussed in innovations quite a lot, right? The way we've organized right now is where all teams from different cross-functions actually operate in what we say as one performance cell, delivering on a consumer job. So by definition, everyone's working towards solving a problem for the customer and delivering a customer experience which is superior than everyone else. And innovation and boiling it down to experimentation becomes one of the principles and values that you follow. Which means, I think again, just talking about those large investments and the fact that only large investments will deliver innovations. This team continuously experiments multiple times over basis hypotheses created to get results and then scale. They also make sure that the risk that the organization can take is within the limits of what you can drive. Right? And all of this is done within the regulatory framework. And then a lot of times, at least in India, my belief is that the regulator is very accommodative. So if you have to go tomorrow and say that we're trying to do this, if it's in the interest of the customer, the regulator is always supportive in either creating sandboxes for you or making sure that they work with you in creating it. So in our sector, I think organizing ourselves to execute quickly to deliver on what the customer wants within the framework is the approach that we take.
So that's very nice. That's very nice. So one more thing I was wondering about is that when we talk about this culture of innovation and building brands, it's not just the innovation culture has to get here. It has to operate down to the level, the ground level, and everybody has to keep on contributing in that process. So how does the organization as keep those channels of communication open, that what is happening at the ground, ideas can be picked up from there, and they can also be incorporated in the overall strategy that it is called. So maybe Vineeth,
So like I was saying earlier, it's once you form this cross-functional team that is going to be working on the project, I think it's very important that the team has shared ownership of the problem and the way they're trying to solve the problem. Gantt charts and timelines and phase-based and all that are fine. But at the end of the day, too many units. It shouldn't become a finger-pointing thing between departments. So there has to be this shared ownership. Now, that ownership starts right at the beginning. So you're talking about how do you percolate, how do you pull out insights or pull out information. So as the team, which has been allotted a certain opportunity space, is working on the ground on generating with a lot of curiosity and trying to discover what is it that will give us the right to win. For example, in the context of some project, we were looking the markets, and when you make a discovery, it feels like, wow, I didn't know that. I mean, that's cool. Like for example, the pizza delivery guys have put sachets of oregano in every house. So I was in Madurai the other day, and the lady was making oregano rasam. And surprisingly, yesterday I was in Rohini, and I was again doing some house visits, and I found that oregano chole bhature. Now, for the space that we were kind of exploring, I don't know if it's the relevant insight, but it set us thinking like, this is something, have we hit upon something? Similarly, we were doing some work a few weeks ago on another opportunity space, and we found that the instant pasta manufacturers have created such widespread awareness of this Italian thing called pasta that every kirana dukandar today is selling loose fusilli, but he calls it spring. Every kirana dukandar in urban rural markets is selling penne, but he calls it stew. So what's happened is that the market has got created by instant pasta guys, but the fulfillment is happening through loose borewala pasta manufacturers. And a supporting setup is also sprouted, which is basically the masalas, pasta masalas. So now we're wondering, are we onto something? You know? So when you get one of those insights, it's like eureka. Like I was doing some work on aromatic basmati a few weeks ago in RSP. And network nahi tha in the house where the researcher, the quality researcher and the moderator were. So I couldn't call them. So I was like maybe 200 meters from the home. I was just loitering, and then the smell of traditional aromatic Himalayan foothill basmati hit my nostrils. And I actually found the house because I smelled my way to the house. And then it struck me, do I have something? I mean, it cannot be a product of mindset. It may be like a communication. In fact, if you see our Kohinoor ad, you'll find that we've worked on that recent Kohinoor campaign, So there are a lot of these things that the team is exploring together. Like we were in Bombay, in the suburbs, a few weeks ago, and we were doing some consumer work on blended oils early in the morning, maybe about 11ish. So these are NCCSB households. We were meeting homemakers, and the husbands had gone to office and the children had gone to school. All of them on a Monday morning had one nightclub stamp. So Saturday night outs, girls' night outs, I would not have expected them to be doing that. I mean, it's like every Saturday, the girls get together. And I was also surprised that everybody's doing something entrepreneurial, either a coaching class or yoga class or something. So is that a communication side? I was in Vijayawada, and a lady, we were having consumer immersion and all that. And so everything was fine. Husband, very, very loving husband, hardworking guy, makes good money, very happy with the family situation. Children are doing well, daughter's doing very well in school. So we asked her, so what kind of a life do you want for your daughter? Do you want her to become like you? Then she said, no, I don't want her to be financially dependent on anyone. This is LCCS, we do equal. So it struck me like everything on the surface seemed normal, but
all of this goes into your thinking about how money grant should stand.
So these eureka moments, like I didn't know, wow. These are the things I think that they may be useless, but at times those become the things that help you construct a product proposition and a communication and a full package marketing mix that can actually make the difference.
Great, thank you. I just want to do this CMOs who are sitting there how much role, of course, the top leadership role they have a role to play, but how is organization how the top leadership needs to ensure that this role is done well. They should push whatever we have been talking about this in terms of that it has to be purpose innovation, it has to link with organization, what the organization stands for, and gathering data from the consumers, also probably accepting that the failure is going to be high. So, what all done by the top leadership to ensure that all of this keeps on? We are out of time, but we'll just.
Yes, we'll be swift, we'll be extremely swift. So, see, in my view, whatever might be the culture that you need to ingrain, it has to start from the top. It must start from the top. So the number one responsibility is ours. The buck stops at us. That is how it is. So if innovation is the culture that needs to be incorporated, it needs to start with us. That is number one. Decision needs to be taken, this is part of culture. Second, you have to very clearly define what this means and what this doesn't mean. Because culture is nothing but exhibited behaviors and behaviors that are avoided. What behavior exhibits innovation, what doesn't, has to be very clearly defined. Third, identify what are the inhibitors in the organization that are holding people back from exhibiting these behaviors. Fourth, get those out of the way. Fifth, reward the right behaviors. So all of this is the leader's job. The leader's job is not to actually innovate, but to pave the way for innovation to happen. And when the best innovations come to you, become a champion for it to take it forward.
I think well said, and again, also we're marketers, so we'll quote some sources. I think the very recent Harvard Business Review also quoted that almost 40% jump in productivity happens if innovation is at the root of the culture of an organization. And hence, again, a leader's responsibility is to be able to fuel that. So first, do you have a leadership team that has the appetite for innovation and truly has that appetite? And a lot of the points were made here, to be able to take the risk, that risk appetite, setting aside budgets, resources. At KFC, we are organized, and we were talking about multifunctional teams. We're organized, all 130 people in the organization are part of some squad, which are multifunctional squads. One is for transaction growth, one is for digital growth, one is for customer experience, one is for regionalization. So these are squads, multifunctional. That's one. How do you, to Gunjit's point as well, how do you recognize the skill sets in all the people that you have, bring those relevant skill sets together, identify any bottlenecks that you can help remove in the path of innovation. But it truly starts from, like we said, the DNA and the culture has to be, we have an appetite for innovation which leads to growth, and that's communicated down to the last wire, and that's something that you demonstrate every day. It's not something that you pick up once as a forum, once in a quarter everybody meets and talks about a fancy thing called innovation. On a daily basis, your teams, your franchisees, yourselves, everybody has to be part of that growth, forum or innovation.
Just concluding words.
Yeah, I have to say this, and going back to your previous question before this actually, of course the part on a framework is extremely important. Without a framework, it doesn't work. But I just want to say this, that I think Prof asked, is everybody involved in that innovation process, and how do you co-opt people from below, from the grounds up, right? Now, I think it's very important to understand the roles of different people. You want information to flow grounds up, but please don't make the mistake of saying that everybody is going to be an innovation lead, because that leads to indiscipline. I'll give you a small example. In my company, there is only one chairman. If even the salesman is going to start doing strategy, then the salesman is going to do his own protocols. Colgate, Palmolive, ITC, anybody else who's in the business of managing distributed salesmen in the market, everybody's been given down a process on how a sales call needs to be done. Now, if every individual starts innovating on that steps of making a call, or I am a part of a clinic which performs surgeries or setups. Now, if every doctor was to start innovating, on how they want to go about doing procedures, it's utter chaos and utter madness. So, innovation is not a license to be indisciplined. There are people who are supposed to be performing certain roles. You need to co-opt as many people grounds up into those teams, but it does not give the license to everybody to be doing their own thing in the name of I'm trying to innovate on my on what I'm supposed to do. Imagine a Jawan in the army starts innovating on the war front, and starts going against what the stated command of his commander is. So I'm saying let's be very careful about, keeping those checks and balances in place.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Any last quick word from you, Akash?
No, I mean, I partially disagree with Karan. That's why last statement. I think this belief that only people who wear innovation hats are the ones who are supposed to innovate. In my mind, it's a way of looking at it, saying that innovation can only be done by some smart people, not by everyone. Yes, the context for everyone is clear. As long as you can, sort of innovate within that context, why not? Even an army jawan comes through an uncertain and a plan where the expected direction might not work, so you're expected to innovate. That's my limited point. I mean, I'm going back to the point. It's everyone's responsibility to innovate, and I agree with Karan when he says that the information has to flow one direction. But for example, one of my beliefs is in a bank specifically, there are only two roles. You either serve the customer or you serve somebody who serves the customer. The guy who serves the customer, who's in the front line, understands consumer needs far better than anyone who can sit in a head office, right? So I think it has to be everyone's responsibility, given in a context, and make sure there is something different which adds value for everyone within the organization. That's my limited point.
Thank you very much. I think the key takeaway is that what I can figure out is that yes, innovation has to flow, but there has to be some basic level of common processes needs to follow, and there will be some tweaking which has to happen. Otherwise, how well you manage that process, that we have been talking about, process becomes very important. That is what is going to lead to that culture being rewarded and like top leadership and those who realize the communication. This is what is going to drive it. Thank you very much for being a wonderful panel, and that's all from us.